Hi everyone and welcome to International Women's Day here in Cambridge. A beautiful day today, and I know that our nirvana is such that we don't need an International Women's Day etched in chalk behind me. But whilst we do, we have gathered an amazing group of individuals to talk about their experiences, their construct for success. So the first thing that we're going to do, I think you know I'm Harriet Green and I am thrilled to be here in Cambridge. And I'm going to introduce this amazing group of individuals. So I'd like to start with Millie. Millie, tell everyone about you.
Hi everyone, I'm Millie. I'm a third year studying land economy, which is economics, law and sustainability here at Cambridge. And I'm also the president of Cambridge University Women in Business Society, which is the largest female and non-binary society in Cambridge. And we aim to support and empower all female students in Cambridge to achieve their dreams and basically create the next generation of future leaders.
Fabulous, thank you, Millie. And I really appreciate you joining us and giving us examples today that others can relate to. So Leah, over to you.
Yeah, hello everybody, I'm Leah McLean. I'm the creative director of Varsity this term. I'm a first year HSBS student, that's Human Social Political Sciences. We've recently just done a big shoot with about 30 models and a big creative team on queer narratives in Cambridge, and that was super fun. I'm looking to start an artist collective next term to showcase more work. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's going to be very exciting. And so Danielle, to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Danielle. I'm also a third year student here at Cambridge studying land economy. I'm also the co-founder of a student-led non-profit organisation called Females in Finance, which aims to empower, educate and really encourage non-binary and female students to pursue a career in the finance industry. So as you can imagine, I'm quite interested in that aspect. I'm also very passionate about social mobility. So I've done a lot of work with the college that I'm associated with, St Catherine's College in Cambridge, which has gained a lot of local attention from the news, which is quite nice. And in my spare time, I really enjoy kind of exercising, doing a lot of artwork. So I'd love to hear more about the kind of the work you're doing, maybe get involved. But that's a little bit about me.
And Danielle and Leah are also supermodels. So we'll get on to that in a minute. And then, absolutely not last, well, you are last, but not least. Sharina, tell us about you.
Yeah, so I'm Sharina. I'm currently studying entrepreneurship at Judge Business School here at Cambridge. I think I'm the only master's student on the panel. I run a property management company. I've been running that for 5 years now. That's based down in Exeter. And I'm really interested in teaching more people about becoming an entrepreneur. So I have a podcast show called Startup Start Now. And through that, I've had the opportunity to interview an array of UK business leaders. So the founder of Gymshark, Ben Francis, the new dragon on Dragon's Den, Stephen Bartlett, and an array of, other people. And then back in 2014, I started a society similar to Cambridge Women in Business. I started Aston University Women in Business. So here to talk a little bit again about sort of the work that I've done around sort of women in business as well.
So what an amazing, I think, diverse, and we're going to have a very inclusive session. And the theme this year for International Women's Day is breaking the bias. And some of the things that we'd like to talk about actually are sort of founded around an Oscar Wilde quote. And Oscar Wilde said that success is a science. If you have the conditions, you can get the result. And so I wanted to get some thoughts from each of you about how you have changed your conditions for success, how you have removed obstacles, broken things down and, bashed through bias. Give us some kind of real examples that might help those who are listening and watching learn from all of you. So who'd like to kick off? Leah.
By all means. Well, I think something that I've been really looking into is how to create, if you're talking about conditions for success, I would say that's other people. fundamentally. And I've learned recently, working in a big group, especially with a lot of queer models who come from a lot of different backgrounds. We were working on Valentine's Day, which was a very different sort of day for each of these queer models. And we thought, what do we think of when we think about what makes us feel empowered? It's not always family for queer people. And it's sometimes creating family among who you're working with. And this is sort of what gave me courage to sort of redefine like working relationships with them and think, and what made me think about the Artist Collective, because I was like, I'd rather like to work with you all a lot longer than this.
Yes.
And, so sometimes I would say in business, one of the thoughts of like what success is, it's fast paced, it's getting out. But I actually think, I thought in this shoot, the success came from the last shot when we were in a bedroom and we were all together and working really slowly. We were just taking our time and like looking at each other and appreciating each other and talking about, what we thought of as family, etc. And I think I found success there more than the actual end, thing that was rushing it out.
So what do you think, Sharina? Do you relate to any of that from Leah? And do you have some conditions or biases that you've changed in some way?
Yeah, definitely. I, took a lot away from what you've just said, and actually, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting to learn. I think with myself, I had done what most, undergrads did, which I was really looking to the field of where am I going next work-wise, and I saw everybody running towards the corporate sphere, and I just got on that treadmill with them, and I was thinking, right, which of the big four do I want to work for? What investment banks? And sort of was then really changing what I wanted to do and what I had thought as a younger girl was success for me, and jumped on that bandwagon. So I did my placement year at Microsoft. I did my graduate scheme at Royal Bank of Scotland. And every day I was turning up and showing up to work. And my first rotation was real estate finance because I started working at an estate agency from the age of 17. My second one was working on the Women in Business Empowerment Movement with Alison Rose, who's the CEO. And the third one was working with was working at Coutts Bank with really sort of wealthy, successful people that had made a lot of money from their ventures. And all of a sudden, all these different rotations were kind of challenging me and making me think about where I saw my future and where my passion lied. And through that, sort of talking about breaking barriers, whilst all the other grads were loving what they were doing and excited about their next rotation or rolling off the grad scheme, I was thinking of running the other way, and I was like, I'm going home and I'm living with entrepreneurs that are talking about how their business is thriving and they're waking up every day and just loving life. I'm going to work and you've got these super wealthy people that are loving life and making a lot of money. And I'm like almost slightly envious of the grads that are just so happy with what they were doing. And that was a time that I would definitely say was breaking down barriers of going, do you know what? I can't just keep showing up every day and living somebody else's life. And I talking about I went for drinks with some of my managers and they would be telling me what they would wish they were doing if they weren't working at the bank. So then when I decided I was going to leave the bank, I told them I was planning to move back to Devon, and they were, oh, you shouldn't do that. And I thought it was really interesting. On a Thursday night, when they've had a few drinks, they would also say that they wouldn't want to be there. But when I finally decided to jump ship and move back home, they were the ones that were like, no, people from Exeter don't get this opportunity. People don't get to do stuff like this. You should stay. You're really making the right decision.
So this point about beginning to form for yourself what success looks like.
Exactly.
What is it? What's for you, and not conforming or becoming what others want you to do. We're here on International Women's Day with an amazing group of individuals here in Cambridge, and we're hearing about obstacles, biases, and creating conditions for success. So Danielle, what do you think in hearing from Leah, Sharina? What do you think would, from your experiences, inform or enlighten our audience?
I think for me and my personal experiences, of course, there are a lot of external barriers, but I think for me it's more internal barriers in terms of confidence in myself, my ability, what I'm passionate about. And I think, of course, that is informed by kind of the environment that I surround myself in, the people I surround myself with. And so what has worked for me is gradually finding the people I relate to or I feel comfortable around or who are empowering. And I think at Cambridge, surprisingly, I found a lot of people like that because I had a lot of self-doubt about whether I'd fit in. I had imposter syndrome, whether I should actually be here. And I think being here and meeting the people I have and people who are also passionate about the subject that I'm studying or the career that I want to go down, that's helped my own personal confidence as well. And I think that is a major barrier to success because if you're not confident in yourself, you might not take the opportunities, you might not challenge yourself in a way that you are capable of doing, but if you don't believe it, you're not gonna
If
get
you don't
there.
believe in yourself,
Exactly.
how will others believe in you? And I think this thing about surrounding yourself with people who can help develop you, believe in you, to Sharina's point, just going for the name and the brand, you know, finding those that want to, you know, help you be you. Minnie, what do you think about, you know, your sense of what you're learning about the conditions for success for you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, listening to all of you like speak and what you've said, the kind of the conditions for success, I couldn't relate more to all of them. And I think coming back to the confidence thing, I had a really tricky start to Cambridge. Again, I really struggled with imposter syndrome. I was also diagnosed with anxiety at the time, and the first term was just awful. I just felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like I wasn't worthy of being here. And it got to the point that I didn't want to continue. And it basically, after the end of Michaelmas term, so the first term, I met people from Cambridge Women in Business and basically just made this community of women around me who supported me and gave me the confidence that I could believe in myself. And it was silly things like I couldn't submit an essay without having someone else read it first because I just had no confidence in my own abilities. And I think as soon as I found a group of women who were able to give me the confidence to believe in myself and my abilities, it just transformed my experience and also my perception of success. I think before that, what you were saying, Sharina, about, you know, getting the best internship and going to the big names, that was the only thing I viewed as success. Whereas now I think success comes from just being happy and comfortable with where I am and proud of what I've achieved and like proud of where I want to go. And that might not be a big name bank or, you know, law firm, but I think that's kind of how I see success at the moment.
So we're here, International Women's Day in Cambridge. You might wonder why I keep repeating that. The people join in to LinkedIn Live. And also I've always wanted to be an anchor. So I kind of like doing it. But, and we're here with an amazing group of individuals. And we're talking about creating your own conditions for success. So we're going to do a slightly a fast round, you know, on sort of advice, things you've learned, etc. I'm going to kick off. We've got a keynote a little bit later about things that have been helpful or invaluable in terms of progressing within your own construct of success. And I've got a couple I'm going to kick off with. I think it's very important that this is actually a Wayne Gretzky ice hockey quote. 100% of the shots you don't take will not going to in. And I love that. If you don't do it, you know, it's sort of, it is not going to happen. The other one is maybes are never bees. There's a lot of maybes, you know, and committing to something that you love, that you know, really excites you. Commitment is a powerful force. So let's do a fast round, a quick fire round, and pick us a little bit of advice, a kernel, a pearl of advice to our listeners. So Sharina, I can see you've got one on the tip of your tongue.
So yeah, there's a great one which is, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, but you can't get the results for the work that you haven't done. I just I take a lot away from that. I think sometimes, you know, wanting something to come off, but actually you do need to do the background, you do need to do the homework, the due diligence in order to then exceed at that. And then, so I would say that's probably like a little nugget that I've just seen this week. I think it's been coming up on Reels and TikToks a lot, and I've just been like,
But also you proved that. You did a marathon at the weekend. We think that's pretty incredible. So,
And the heels are back on.
yeah, you can't be without the heels. So, Millie, did you have a kernel, a pearl of wisdom?
I'm not sure if it's pearl of wisdom. I have this quote that I really love, and it's and one day she discovered that the fire inside of her burned brighter than her fears, and I think that has just been like something that's just been instrumental to me in terms of figuring out that as soon as you find what you're passionate about and what you love, you will be confident and be happy and want to achieve that despite all the fears, all the kind of chatter that might be in the back of your mind saying that you can't do it. As soon as you find something you're passionate about, all those voices just disappear, and it's just amazing.
What do you think?
For me, this is from my mum. Sure, you said.
Yes.
You don't ask, you don't get.
Yes.
Whether that's for an opportunity, for help of your peers, for anything, a suggestion, guidance, anything like that. If you don't ask, you might struggle on your own. You might work it out, but it might take you longer. You might struggle. You might continue with self-doubt. Use the networks that you've got. Use the resources that you've got to kind of help you get in that direction. That's it for me.
I have two.
Oh.
The first is the Kate Blanchett. When she was asked why she doesn't direct, she said it's a bit like hosting a great dinner party. You can't just talk about it, you've got to be able to do it. It's true.
Yeah.
And the second is some Oscar speech from some guy, I don't remember his name, but he said, surround yourself with people whose eyes light up when they see you.
Oh,
so
yes,
true.
I've also
So
seen
true.
that as well.
So I draw an
It's
eye in my
beautiful.
journal every time I see it.
It's amazing. And the theme this year for International Women's Day is break the bias. And I think many of you know I've done International Women's Day for a very, very long time all over the world. And my breaking the bias is actually in being here, because we all have conscious and unconscious biases. And I thought, I always like to be in richly diverse places where we can demonstrate massive inclusion, that I wouldn't be able to find that at Cambridge. And that's my bias. And I've confronted it and look at the talent we have around us, creating this safe, respectful, equitable environment. So any biases that you've broken, or any advice as others start to think about, the first thing is to know what your bias, we all have them, and how do we recognize those and deal with it. But anything on the bias front, I'm here at Cambridge, sort of dealing with mine. What do you think?
Well, I have a lot of biases in this place. I find in Cambridge it's very quick. If you're breaking a bias, it's kind of like the assumption that there's been a category there in the first place. Categories of people is it happens so fast. Like the queer community, there's the queer stereotype. The POC community, there's POC stereotype. So I was very hesitant to work within these communities for fear of just like being chucked on in there. So which is why I was like, okay, let's do the first queer shoot. And now the second one we're actually doing on imposter syndrome with a bunch of POC students from Johns and Trinity. So we're bringing biases in the sense that I feel like we're trying to sort of soften those like immediate identity, like surroundings. This is what I'm labeling you as.
A badge.
This is the POC from Johns and Trinity. It's like, no, he's more than that. Let's talk about discussion. Let's shoot them just in their normal life. And then because it's like, okay, yeah, great. Let's get them in their cultural attire and put it on the front page. And it's like, but does he wear his cultural attire every day? Am I dressing him up for you to show you what a queer person is or what a POC person is? Can I not just shoot him in his Adidas tracksuit in a super room, which is where he is every day? Which is what we're gonna do. So
Also blurring the, not having these distinct badges, labeling. Very, very helpful advice.
Probably want to chip in on that one. So Cambridge Union.
Let's begin that conversation.
So it is obviously been a space that's typically been for white male privileged space. It's the largest society on campus. It's the oldest debating society in the world.
Is that right?
Yeah.
She's quite fit.
And I've been their equalities officer, and actually, we talk about taking up space, we talk about entering rooms, and I agree with you. There was so many times that I was like, how am I going to enter this space where I'm maybe not going to feel accepted, or I'm going to see or hear things that don't agree with? And actually, one of my principles is speaking up when I don't see things that work, and being in the room to be able to speak up, rather than, I could have come here, turned my back on it, and just been like, well, that's someone else's problem.
You're being the change that you want to see in the world, and being a voice.
Yeah, and I think, calling things out, because at the end of the day, let's be honest, not everybody understands the things like we do. And if you're not there to have those open conversations and to help them on their way, it's going to become next generation
Stereotypes get reinforced.
So, taking up space is quite a big word that we use here in Cambridge, but I believe in that. Speaking up when you see things are wrong. And then actually, if I'm not in that space, how am I going to attract other people of colour, other females to come and sit in the chamber and to do that? So,
because it's so easy to just punch holes in things and say, it doesn't work, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Well, it's never going to flow.
Absolutely. So, really proud to say that during that time we have a 50-50 gender split term card.
Yes,
we had 1 in 3 people of colour on the term card, and let's keep that energy moving.
I think that's really important, because I think one of the biases for me is that I thought that Cambridge isn't diverse and everyone's from private schools, everyone's from the same background, and I won't fit in. But you have to be the change that you want to see. And I think I think that opinion was reinforced by my peers at schools, who sometimes would knock me down because of my background and where I'm from, that I won't fit in, I'm going to struggle, this might not be the right place for me. So I think coming here, what I've done to try and overcome that for other people is I worked for, as I mentioned, with my college as a BAME officer, and I've been helping with access, doing webinars to people so females as well, people from ethnic minority backgrounds, just so that they can see that there is a space for them here. And I think we need people like that within these institutions to show that there is a space for change.
And I think building on that, we're at International Women's Day in Cambridge with an amazing group. I also think we've talked a little about imposter syndrome, being the change, blurring the badges and edges of distinction. I also think that failure is personally the privilege of those of us who act. So I have failed a lot at many different things, and at our keynote later, I'm going to talk about some of those. But I've always had the sense in some of these great learning institutions that you can't fail. And what you're all sort of demonstrating by, Millie, the challenges you had when you first came and how you fought through that, the way that you're rethinking how you creatively bring people together and use your voices to get deeper diversity and inclusion. Have any of you had any little failures on the way that you've learned from, or would give advice to those who have tuned in to hear, from those that might inspire them?
I feel like
well, you and I have had slightly longer on the planet, so then my multiple failures.
I failed my A levels, and I still got into Cambridge. So
wow,
my dad always says, "Don't tell people that." I got EUU for my A levels, and I had to go and do a BTEC national diploma. I did that, and that's how I got into Aston. And years later, I've been able to come and
inspiration. Thank you for sharing that. I hope you don't get in trouble. Your father's a
I'll just send him your way.
Sharina's dad, I'm ready to talk to you.
Lots of failures of businesses, failures of relationships. We can be here all day.
But you've gotten stronger from those, you've learned from those.
Everything.
Do you agree it's the privilege of those of us who act?
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, like, those failures have got me to start a business that I want to be with the right person, to do what I want to do, to come back and want to be in education and meet other people. So all those failures, like, I would rather live a life of try, get knocked down, see how things go, and just give it a go, rather than just sit at that steady pace. And coming back to the conditions part, sometimes we don't even know when the conditions are around us that are right, because opportunities are presenting themselves all the time. And you've got to be open to letting those doors in, replying to those emails, going to those networking events,
Yes.
going for a coffee with someone, because I wouldn't be sitting at this table had Millie and I not met through, Cambridge Women in Business. And because I can come here and do my studies and go home, but actually this is the more fruitful things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit about failures, but also opportunities
very
at the
much
same
so.
time.
And as you think about, regardless of all of the stories that you beautifully and openly told, we are relatively privileged, all of us, to be here at this time. And any advice or, as you think about the very wide array of people who are listening in, as you think about women as you think about the struggle we have, I have one that I'll kick off with, that when I was, going to university, which is a very long time ago, there were universities, but I didn't have many positive male role models. And so I arrived at university very angry, very sort of, we can do this on our own, the movement. And I learned way too late that really bringing, fathers, uncles, brothers, cousins, men, people who weren't just like me into the struggle to get ultimately no International Women's Day was something that I wish I had known at 18, that I didn't have to be quite so fierce, quite so angry, and quite so anti. And I've learned that a bit more humor and grace and involvement actually goes, in case you hadn't noticed, that was me being graceful and involved, goes quite a long way. But from your perspectives, anything that, you wish someone had told you when you were, you're all still quite young in the great scheme of things. So if we're all going to live to 100, we've still got ages to go. But anything that you've sort of wish you'd known a little earlier?
Mine is kind of similar to this, and it sounds very trivial, but laugh at yourself more.
Oh, yeah.
I've always been someone, I don't know, it's being an older child and feeling like I've had a lot of responsibility, but I've always felt like it's had to be perfect, and I've had to do everything perfectly, and it's really embarrassing if something doesn't go right. And I think that actually makes people kind of be scared of you or not want to engage with you, and actually you can kind of create a much better, more supportive environment when you're much more willing to accept when you laugh at yourself when something's gone wrong, than trying to be perfect the whole time, because it's just like this facade that no one can break, and it doesn't help anyone.
I would also say kind of make sure to still be yourself though, because I don't ever want to kind of feel that I have to change the way I am to be more palatable or to be more passive or anything like that, to kind of be more likely to get my point across. Of course, read the room and and act suitably. But also I think for me it's still just being myself, speaking the way that I do, and not feeling that I'm going to intimidate other people necessarily, because it's often men feel intimidated when a female is quite confident around them. And I think that is not necessarily, it is what you make of it, because you can use that to your strength, or it can also empower other women in the room to still speak up for themselves. So I think, of course, still be yourself and portray that in the best way you can.
And we've got some amazing questions here. So we're going to do a fast sort of fire round. And they're absolutely great questions, I think. So we've had a couple of people wanting to say, look, you've talked about imposter syndrome. Give us each a practical tip. So a couple of you said, actually 3 of you said that you'd experienced imposter syndrome. Practical tip on someone, a number of people out there saying, I feel this too.
So my number one tip, which we got told last week from the founder of Ann Summers, but it's something that I do myself. So write an email to yourself of all of your achievements. They could be personal achievements, work-related achievements, just the stuff you're really proud of. And I get all of my mentees to do this. When you're having a bad day, look at it. That kind of just reminds me of who I am, dust myself off, and I'm ready to go again.
I would say kind of similar to that. What I do whenever I'm feeling a lack of confidence, rather than it being my achievements, it's my personality, my skills. So it's more kind of, I feel confident in who I am and that I do have the capability to then go on and do those achievements. So I think both of them would work quite well hand in hand.
I'd say just remember that whatever room you go into, you're 100% yourself and you'll leave with 100% of yourself. You don't need anything from that room and nothing's taken away from it. You know, you're going to leave with 100% either way.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I'd also say on top of that, kind of going into the room thing, even if you act confident, if you don't feel it, if you feel like you're an imposter and you don't deserve to be there, as soon as you act confident, you instantly feel better. Instantly, yeah.
So we've got a couple from the US, which is kind of interesting around how can men best help us? How, you know, how should men, uncles, brothers, cousins, you know, be best involved to help us achieve a greater sense of breaking the bias or equality? Tips for men.
Tips for men. Yeah. Got any?
I would probably say don't shy away from the conversation. Sort of listen to what your female peers are saying, listen to what their struggles are or what their fears are, and do what you can to either support them or facilitate an environment where they feel confident. So I think just listening and then acting on potentially what they say.
Just to build on that, I'd say like almost actively provide like women with a space in terms of if you're in a meeting and there's one woman in there and everyone else is men. I think sometimes it's really tricky to speak up, and so it's actively maybe asking them what they think, getting them involved in the conversation is sometimes kind of just a step beyond that we sometimes need.
Yeah.
Pay us.
Someone has to say it. Absolutely.
Say it. So,
Absolutely.
pay us. Start doing the data behind it. I could list off a whole load of stuff, but no, just genuinely, when you see one of your sisters, mums, if you're seeing your friends, tell them what they're good at, you know, giving them that feedback, that constant feedback, sending them opportunities. My brother has sent me so many opportunities or tagged me in things. He's a massive advocate. Again, I think that's such a great way of promoting, because sometimes when we don't even think that perhaps we deserve those roles, they see it in us. Keep doing things like that.
Great.
I would say help us think and speak like us, not like you. So I have a lot of people say, oh, you just need to be more like a man. You need to be like, command the space more like a man. Let me command the space how I want to command the space and make a space for that.
Yeah. Great advice. And one that I particularly love, but of course can never deeply relate to, but it's come up a couple of times, particularly from Spain, which is interesting, about how do you take space if you are an introvert? And as you probably all worked out, I'm a sort of larger than life extrovert. So I can try and put myself in other people's shoes. But which of you here would say you were introverted?
I'm very much
Okay.
introvert.
Speak for the introvert.
So Millie, how do you, how do you, as an introvert, actually take the space? For me, it's natural. So, we're International Women's Day. We put it on the board. We're like, bow, wow, bow. How do you, when you're thinking, what is that woman doing with all that noise? As an introvert, how do you? I don't think any of us would have known that Millie was an introvert.
I didn't know that. I've learned something today.
Thank you. I think it's a really tricky one, because I think we're in a world that is just designed for extroverts, and it's so tricky to kind of balance being introverted with having to adapt to that kind of outside world and make sure that you can hold space. And so I think it's a mixture of knowing that you don't have to be an extrovert in every situation, so you can be the quiet one, and then just kind of impart your wisdom like when and where it's needed. You don't have to be the one that's driving conversation. You can be listening and engaging, and people will still respect your opinions and your thoughts and your values, but you don't have to be kind of the leader. But then I think it's also, again, the kind of fake it till you make it, like forcing yourself out of your comfort zone, and then when you feel like you've had enough of that and you want to go and shoot back inside, know that that's that, and that's self-care for you, and go back into nice safe space. And so it's finding that balance, but it is tricky.
So thank you for sharing
Okay.
that. There was one directly for me about my biases? How have I overcome biases, particularly running big tech organizations around the globe? I think that I always try, my work has been about driving innovation-led growth. And I have found that really diverse groups produce the best solutions. And so by really engaging in understanding, leading is about your head and your heart. And really, if you draw people in and really seek to understand what makes them tick and how they can contribute to the mission, then, it's because of different ages, different sexes, different colors, different creeds, different sexualities, different cognitive and physical abilities. Suddenly, all of that becomes part of the solution. And so I think you almost have to peel the onion of bias. That's sometimes challenging, as you are often the only woman in the room, or probably in my case, never as bright as the smartest, technical person in the room. So another question that's come up that I think is really interesting is, in terms, do you think about equality? Do you feel that we have an International Women's Day, and that in itself is pretty busy. That's worrisome. I can see progress has been made from when I was your ages. But do you feel that equality is being achieved? And if not as much as you'd like, what would be, I give you power over everything. You are now the supreme commander of everything. What would you change, a verb, an adjective, and a noun, to ensure that equality progressed at a faster rate? Or if you feel we've achieved equality, then, I don't think
we're sitting at this.
No, I thought I should show the range there, just to be balanced. I'm not a very balanced person, but what would you do if you're not happy with the level of equality? What would you do?
I'm happy to start with this one. So I would definitely say that no, not happy. I think it's amazing we've made change, but I still think we've got a long way to go. When a day like International Women's Day is no longer significant, then our work is done. And how amazing would it be for future generations to be like, why do we just have these days? And that's kind of what we all aspire to. But in the meantime, I think I talked about the data and the statistics. The US are far more advanced in theirs. We're not. I think also challenging companies and just sort of pushing back. And reporting is important, having these open discussions. So yeah, I definitely think the data side, creating more female role models that are writing books and sharing their stories, profiling women that younger people can see, and male allies that are also promoting that.
Very much so. Very much so.
I think related to that, kind of the inequality is quite embedded in culture and the way society is. So it's also people's personal biases. You need something to shift that before we can change the institutions, we can change what companies are doing. And I think data is incredibly important because it makes it very digestible and easy for people to understand. But at the same time, I think it takes away the human element of it, that these are real people, like we are humans, we face this every day, there is inequality. And I think also maybe there's a platform or a way of just showing other people this is the reality of it, and there's something that needs to be changed. So I think there needs to be a spark of kind of public conversation, but then of course there needs to be policy or something to then carry that through and make real change.
And that's exactly what we're doing here, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're showing you as our future. You represent the future of our world, and you are very different, and you have uniquenesses, and we're demonstrating those.
Just wanted to chip in on that, because if companies are not actually being, if they can continue like this and it's not called out, we do need to look at policies around how it will affect them. So yeah, just wanted to
I would add though, while looking at policy, etc., I think, is equality achieved? I think equality will be achieved as soon as I think, POC women, you realize you get the comment a lot, quota filler, oh, token kind of situation. There was a lot of that for various things you get invited to. I think as soon as you're invited there because you're the core of what that person needs and not sort of condition they need to get a box ticked, then you'll find a quality.
It's very. Really, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was interesting when we were talking about kind of has equality been achieved, because the first thing that came to my mind was about 5 years ago on International Women's Day, I was sat in an economics class and one of the boys said, why do we need an International Women's Day? Why have we not got an International Men's Day? And at the same time, I was
the last 2,000 years.
I know. At the same time, I was the only girl in a class of 15 boys, and they still thought that was, a question that they needed to ask. And so I think it starts from the bottom. Like, we haven't met equality because I was the only girl in that class of 15 boys. It starts from making sure that we have girls in every single class at the kind of the same ratios with men, and doing that, like building up from the bottom the whole way up. Obviously, it's great to have these role models, but we need to create the next generation of people to be equal. And so that's in STEM classes, in economics, and all those different things. So it's having those role models at the top, but also making sure that we're working at it at the bottom.
Yeah,
I think the power of, if you can see it, you can be it.
Yeah.
And some years ago, one of the major telco providers did a massive survey about how young women, 12 to 15-year-olds, what they perceived they would like to be when they grew up. And so, seeing more doctors and journalists and creative directors and CEOs and entrepreneurs, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think certainly in running businesses, having targets across all of Asia, achieving nearly 50% of the executives as men and women, then everyone can see that, we don't have to worry about this. If you are good, you will get on. Now, a tricky question has come up, I think I've provoked this, about how do you know if someone is privileged? So when I was talking about privilege, I've just returned from Asia, working to create schools for the lost girls of COVID, very poor young women who haven't been in education at all for the last 2 years. In that context, we are all massively privileged. But it's an interesting question. We should give it a go, quick fire. How do you know if someone is privileged? Or that person, and another person goes on to say, isn't it one person's privilege is not another person's privilege? What do you think? Do you think we're privileged? Just being here, having this voice? Yes, we kind of are.
Yeah. I think one way you can check privilege is when you say, here's my goal, and you talk about your means to get there, listen to what they're saying and how they'll get there. It's like, what infrastructure is there that they are saying and seeing, that they are saying, oh, I'll get here because I'll do this and I'll talk to this person, I'll get there. See loads of it in Cambridge. Checking privilege is very easy that way, because then you think, okay, how am I going to get there? It's all, you can see your role models. I think it's also so important because it's like this conversation of gatekeeping jobs. I can see the CEOs that look like me. Can I see their structure because of how they get there? No, because often they're presented as that like dream, you can be this, but they're like the rare shining star. I don't see infrastructure.
That's a great way of looking at it. Any other thoughts on privilege? We're going to wind up soon. We've had this amazing conversation on International Women's Day. I think some of the major themes that have come out are about belief in yourself, about not edging everything in too much boundaries and labels, about, I love the different routes that you've taken to get to this place. They are not conventional routes. We're going to do one last quick fire on, I think it would be wonderful for people to hear, what have you gotten from this sort of 45 or whatever minutes of talking on a LinkedIn Live on International Women's Day about yourselves? How do you feel about it?
really lucky that we can sort of talk about our stories and inspire other people and their journeys.
Because you have done that.
Yeah, and for them to know that we are here to help them, really. So if anybody wanted to reach out for more advice, or this isn't enough and they need to find out more, volunteering myself to say that I'd be happy.
Thank you, Sharina. And we will be sharing this epic movie with the names of folks. Like, how do you feel, Millie, as the introvert here? That we didn't know, our secret introvert.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that. I feel proud of myself for doing this. This is the first time I've ever done anything like on LinkedIn, and it's not something that I would naturally want to do as an introvert. And I think it proves that you can do so much more than you are capable of, and particularly for women, I think we tend to put ourselves down and kind of say, oh no, I don't have the skills to do that. But as soon as you put yourself in a situation where you're pushed slightly, you will prove to yourself that you can do so much more than you'd ever imagined.
I say I feel very grateful to kind of be here to share my experiences with everyone on LinkedIn and with you all, but also to learn a lot from everyone else here. And just hearing that everyone has completely different kind of ideas or perceptions, but we're all bound by the fact that we're all women and we share similar experiences. But just seeing the diversity in experiences and knowing that I'm not alone on certain things, I'm extremely grateful for, and I hope that everyone else has kind of gained a bit from that as well.
I feel surprisingly honest. I didn't think that this would naturally be a space where you could just, we were talking earlier about conditions of success. I think one of those is creating a space to fail. And I don't feel any of us were scared to say anything and have it just drop like a pebble in a pond. Like everyone picked it back up again, So I'm grateful for the honesty and the space we created for experimentation.
So you think we had safety and respect and equality?
Yeah.
Wow. That, I think.
Tasty recipe.
Yeah, tasty recipe indeed. So thank you all. I hope you found these amazing individuals just inspiring and compelling. Thank you for participating here in Cambridge and International Women's Day. We'll release this. We'll tag these amazing people in. And I want to say a very big thank you, Sharina, for just being so inspiring, and Danielle for being so lovely and honest, and Leah, some amazing little kernels of brilliance there, and Millie, who didn't really want to do this as our introvert, who's learned that she can hold court with the best and inspire. So a very big thank you to Cambridge for agreeing to do this, and for all of you for joining us. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.